So a little bit about what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be going over some changes that'll happen to the administrative side of the site on the actual day of. So I mentioned this if you came to the conference a month or so back, that the site would look a little bit different here on the administrative side on the day of. And we do that, one, because you don't have the same kind of edit access that you do right now, and two, to make sure that the performance on the site is as good as it can be for those donors. We want to make sure that those donors are getting, the fastest page loads and the best responsiveness that we can offer while they're on the day making their donations to you, because that's what really matters. So we're going to be talking about what those changes look like, what you can expect to see on the day of. We're going to look at how to pull donor and donation data out of the system once you start receiving those donations. We're going to be talking about scheduled donations, when those are going to process and how that works. And then we'll also go over matching funds, how matching funds work in the system. What the donation and checkout pages will roughly look like during the event, so you can just have an idea of what that looks like. We're going to confirm some dates with you, and then walk through how to set up a peer-to-peer campaign. So again, going through all the steps that it takes to set up a peer-to-peer campaign, and then your responsibility as an organization to approve that campaign and maintain it. So with that, we're going to get started. So just to very quickly here at the top of this presentation, confirm a couple of dates, and I'll do this again at the end. Registration will close, so if you're a nonprofit that is not already registered to participate in this event, or a nonprofit who you think should register, registration closes May 15th. At midnight there. So May 15th is the last day there to register. And then organization and campaign edit access is going to close midnight the night before the event. So on the 16th there at midnight, or the 17th, I guess technically at midnight, essentially you'll have the ability to edit and make changes to your organization's profile page that's live on the website, and campaign owners will also have the ability to edit their campaigns up until the night before the event, at which point we'll move into this restricted locked setting where you will no longer have the ability to set those things and make those changes. So your profile will essentially be locked for the remainder of the event there. One thing to note there on that registration closing on the 15th is that really ideally you want to set up your registration before the 1st. So scheduled giving starts May 1st, which means if you're an organization, you really want to be on the site for all of the time that a donor might be able to go on, look for your organization, make a donation. You want to try to get registered and get your profile set up on the site by May 1st, because that is the date that scheduled donations begin. And then again, the day of the event is May 17th and 18th from noon to noon. And checks will be distributed on or around June 15th. So about a month or so after the event, Do More 24 and the United Way will distribute those checks to the participating nonprofits. So with those dates in mind, let's talk a little bit about what your dashboard is going to look like on the day of. So right now we are, this is what is probably familiar to you all. This is the page that you can normally see here where you can edit your donation levels, you can add multimedia, you can manage your campaigns, and you can also see donation information. This is what you're going to see up until that point at which the site officially transitions over into the live event. Once the site transitions into that live event, we're going to see a dramatically different look and feel here. So give me 1 second. I have to change a few settings that make this swap over to the right setup. But I thought it was important to show you just to give us a frame of reference to say, okay, this is what I already know. What's going to be different? So on the day of, this is what you can expect to see. You'll notice you don't have access to really anything else besides this dashboard, which is your donation dashboard. So on the day of the event, you'll be able to see in real time donations coming into your organization. You may have to refresh the page to get those to load, but you will be seeing those donations that are being processed throughout the day. You'll see these details about that donation will also add here to the end if that donation is coming from a specific campaign. So we just need to add that field in there, but that'll be included. So you'll essentially be able to see all the donations coming in, the amounts, who's giving those donations in real time as the day is going on. You'll also have access to this list after the event. So if you want to pull the donation data from your organization after the event, you'll have the ability to pull that. You can do that by hitting this export button. This will export that list, whatever is on the page. We'll export that into a CSV file that you can then use to manipulate further if you need to, if you want to add it to your donor roll or you want to do something different with it there. But that is essentially what you are going to be able to do and see on the day of. So dramatically reduced, but you will be able to see your donation and your donor data coming through here on this page. So moving on from that piece, scheduled donations will process. If anyone's wondering, will one scheduled donation start? When am I going to start seeing those donations coming through, and how's that going to work? So scheduled donations will process on the day of the event. So it will not process in real time. So if a donor, let's say, goes to the site on May 2nd, what scheduled donations have opened up, they are scheduling their donation for May 17th. So they'll receive an email confirmation that says, thank you for scheduling this gift. You scheduled this amount to these organizations. We're going to process this on the 17th. You will not see that as an organization. You won't see that in your donation transaction list until after that has been processed, which usually happens in most of our events. That usually happens within the first hour or so of the day is when we run through all of those donations there and make sure that they're processing and working well. You will be able to see in your administrative portal up until the day of the event, you will be able to see those scheduled donations to see what those scheduled donations are looking like. So to do that, I'm just getting that pulled up here for you. If we look at our test organization here and you go under donation information, you'll have this tab. You have this tab accessible to you right now. You'll be able to see processed donations and scheduled donations for GivesDay. From May 1st up until the event date, you can come in and look at the scheduled donations that you have here. So these are donations that are set to be processed on the 17th, but they haven't actually been run through the system. The credit card hasn't actually been charged at this point. Once those donations are processed on the day of, they move into this processed donations area. Now you'll notice again, we're back on our view that you can see outside of the event. This is where we have access to all those other areas. This is what you'll see after the event. So after the event, you'll be able to go in and again, see these processed donations, export this list if you need to be able to pull that donation data. And before the event, you'll be able to click on scheduled donations for GivesDay and see what scheduled donations you have coming in. So you'll be able to kind of anticipate a minimum of, well, how many scheduled donations do we have? One note about that, just so everybody is clear, scheduled donations do not count towards prizes. So scheduled donations aren't going to count towards timed prizes. So if there is a prize for the first half of the day or for a particular hour, those scheduled donations aren't going to count towards those things. So if you are trying to strategize and think about winning a particular prize that you want to go for, take that into account. If you're going for a particular timed prize or something unique, you want to make sure that the donations that you're asking your donors to contribute are going towards that prize. So an important piece to know there. That is how you'll be able to see your scheduled donations coming in before the event, and then after the event where you'll be able to find your processed donations, as well as that different view that you'll see on the actual day of the event. So let's talk a little bit, speaking of prizes and speaking of the financial piece around how the site operates, we'll talk a little bit right now about matching funds. So if you have a question about schedule donations or process donations. If you have a question about how your dashboard is going to look, or what your donor donation data looks like, feel free to ask that in the Q&A section. Just click that Q&A button and type in your question, and we'll try to get to it here. But otherwise, we're moving on to the matching funds segment here. So when you are setting up your profile, you may have noticed that you have a question that asks if you have matching funds. If I'm here and I'm setting up my profile and I say, do I have matching funds? Yes, no. If I answer yes, this field comes that asks me, what's the amount for that matching fund? You put in that amount. So how does this amount impact your day? This amount impacts your day by essentially inflating your total donation amount and incentivizing donors. To contribute a little bit more because they know a match is ongoing. So what that looks like on the front end, we don't have this quite yet built out, but I can give you an idea of where it will be placed and what it'll look like. On the day of the event, if I switch here to our event mode, we have the Donate Now button where donors can come in, and then we have our donation ticker. So on the day of, you'll have this little donation amount here. This will be the total for all of your donations that have come through the site. So a donor has given you a donation, they give you $100. That donation amount right here will scroll up to $100. It'll move its way up. And so throughout the day, donors will be able to see how well your organization is doing, what you're fundraising, etc. Matching funds impact this number. They also impact the way this screen displays. So during matching, when you are looking at matching funds, if you indicate that you have a matching fund and you put $1,000 per se, let's say, you'll see underneath this unique donors and the donation amount here, you'll see matching funds, very similar to how this is laid out. And it'll say $1,000 at the very beginning of the day. As donors make donations, the matching fund amount subtracts, and the total that your organization has raised increases. So the matching fund functionality in our system works as a one-to-one match. So what that means is if we have that $1,000 matching fund amount here, and a donor comes in and they're the first donor of the day and they donate $100, what will happen is that matching fund amount after that donation is processed will reduce to $900. It'll say you have $900 left in the match, and it'll continue to go down as donors give more. Your total ticker amount here on the organization profile will go up by $200. So it'll go up by $100 for the real donation that came through the system, and it'll include that $100 from the matching amount, and it'll increase that to $200. So something really critical to understand here. This is helping you really show that you've got a lot of support in the community, just kind of to encompass all the ways in which the community supports this day. It's including that number. However, that number does not, it's not your official number of the amount of money that's been processed through the system. If you have that matching amount, you need to know that, if you have that $1,000 and, your donors have gone in and donated at least $1,000, you're going to see $2,000 here. You're not going to see only the $1,000 that have actually been processed through the system. You're also going to see the $1,000 that you had in that match amount. Another important piece, like we said, prizes don't count matching funds. So that means that this number here is not a reliable indicator of whether or not you've won a particular prize, because it's inflated with that matching amount. If it says $2,000 and you had that $1,000 match and it's now been depleted, really you have $1,000 in eligible money that can go towards winning a particular prize. So an important thing to note there, really the best place to know exactly how much has been processed through the system from individual unique donations from donors is in the back end in those areas we just talked about, those process donation area, where you can see the line items of each individual donation that's come through here. Alicia had a question. What is a campaign? I just want to make sure I'm understanding that term correctly. That's a great question. So a campaign is essentially a fundraising page, a peer-to-peer page. Those are kind of interchangeable terms we use here. But a campaign is essentially a fundraising page that an individual donor is setting up on behalf of that organization. So if you have let's say a board member or a really excited volunteer that loves your organization and they want to set up a fundraising page, kind of like a GoFundMe or something like that, they can set up that individual page that they can kind of have their own language around to say, you know, I gave to this I'm supporting this organization. I don't know if this one has any information, but you can see here an example of a test campaign. I'm supporting this organization. Here's why they make an impact in the community and why I'm supporting them. I want to try to raise $400 here for them. And then they can see that amount being raised kind of going up throughout the day to increase that kind of social sharing aspect of that campaign. That donor can then use their own specific URL to navigate directly to their campaign to say, you know, I'm trying to raise $400, donate to my campaign, and they can have their own unique URL, just like an organization can have one, doMore24.org/mycampaign. And then they can take that URL, they can share it with their social channels, and they can try to get their friends and family to help support. And so that's kind of a little overview of that campaign piece. And in a minute here, we'll talk about exactly how a donor can go through the process of doing that so you can support them. And I know Tony's also been working on some training resources and slides that walk through that process as well, but we'll walk through it here today. If you have any questions about matching fund amounts or how they impact prizes or other gamification in the system, please do feel free to ask those questions and we'll try to answer them. Otherwise, we're going to take a look at what the donation and checkout pages will look like on the day of the event. So on the day of the event, a donor will be able to donate either to a campaign or to an organization. They'll have this Donate Now button. This button won't exist currently. If you go to the site, you won't see this Donate Now button. It'll only be active during scheduled donations and during real-time donations on the day of when the system is actually accepting those donations. So when a donor comes to your page, they'll find your page, they'll donate now. They will go here to the donation page where they'll have the option to choose a donation amount. You can manually set this, as we talked about in the conference training setting. You can set this donation amount for your organization by going to the Donation Levels tab. So if you're on your organization donation levels, you'll see here are donation levels. You can customize those and set labels to them to say, you know, $24 is, you know, food for a pet for a week, et cetera, and you can set those. We recommend you limit this to 5. If you get beyond 5 here, it starts to just get a little bit unwieldy and a little bit too long. So setting it at 5. Tony has also suggested that you set these to actually be reverse of what you're seeing on your screen, with the highest amount first and the lowest amount as the last one, to help set donor expectation around how much they should give. By default, everyone is set to the $48 as their donation amount, but a donor can always choose a different amount, select a different amount that they'd like to give, or type in another amount that they'd like to give here. If you opt not to use these donation buttons, if you don't go in here to customize your own donation levels in the administrative side of the site, you'll have these default amounts that you're seeing here: 480, 240, 124, 48, and 24. Those will be the default donation levels if you choose not to set your own custom donation levels. But definitely recommend you set your own custom donation levels, and knowing your donors, knowing who's likely to come onto the site and what your average donation is to your organization can help set these levels so you can increase that donor amount that you're going to see. Donors will be asked a couple of simple questions here. Are you a first-time donor to the organization? We do see a pretty decent number of first-time donors on these events, so definitely good to get this information. and you'll be able to have access to this information as part of that donation data that you can pull from the system. So you'll be able to see how many donors you had on the day of that were brand new to your organization. A donor can also set their donation to be anonymous. If they do that, when you look at your donation history, if you look at your donation information, you'll see that anonymous here under processed donations is set to yes for that individual, and you'll essentially be able to see the transaction date and time and the amount that they give, but none of the identifying first, last name, email, phone number. So donors do have the ability to give an anonymous donation, and then they will be asked to choose whether or not they want to add 9% to help offset the fees for the event. So these are United Way's fees that help offset the fees of both credit card and banking processing fees, as well as our fee, Civicor's fee for setting up and maintaining the platform here. As well as administrative costs and other things that go into that. And I'm sure Tony could speak far more to what those fees entail, but this is the amount for the event, and donors will be able to choose whether or not they want to offset the fees for that event. So if they choose that, that 9% will be added onto whatever their total is for that donation. So at that point, they'll go to their donation cart. At their cart, they'll be able to check out here and review the donations that they have. If a donor wants to make additional donations, they'll be able to do so. And they'll be able to find additional nonprofits. So let's say I wanted to find another organization. I'm going to use the same organization twice, but in theory, a donor could just do this again like I'm doing right now, search for another organization, donate to that organization, say I want to give this organization $24, and I do want to cover fees this time, and add that to the cart. It'll save their history and allow them to essentially donate to a number of different organizations in one transaction. Once they do that, they'll be able to check out. They'll also have the option to donate some nominal amount to the stretch fund or whatever this is going to be called, which we still have to figure the details out for, but they'll go through that checkout process, at which point they'll either create a donor profile. A donor profile will allow them to keep track of their history of donations over time. So if Do More 24 is put on next year and Civicor is still the platform provider, those donors will be able to log into their same account and have their payment profile saved so they can check out really easily or see who they donated to and how much they donated last year. And so those are some of the benefits of setting up a donor profile. It's also required to set up a donor profile during scheduled giving so that donors, because we're scheduling and we're going to process that at a later time, we have to set up a profile to save that information. And donors have to set up a profile if they're going to run a specific campaign. So if they're going to run a campaign on your behalf, they need to set up a profile so they can log in and have access to that campaign. Otherwise, a donor can donate as a guest. So donors on the day of aren't required to create a profile. They can always donate as a guest. If they donate as a guest, they'll be able to see their donation history again here, and then we'll be able to put in their payment information and submit their payment. So a couple of questions here we'll work through. What's the benefit of driving donors to the Do More 24 page versus our own website? There's not particularly a benefit to driving them to the Do More 24 page versus your own sub-page on the site. If you know that your donors, you just want to get in and make their donation to you individually, you can. That's the purpose of that unique URL. So if your organization wants to use that unique URL to drive donors directly to your sub-page here where they can just immediately go to donate, that's the best way to do that. You get your, now I'm on the development site, so you're seeing a lot of extra stuff in my URL here, but essentially what you would see is domore24.org/Civicor Charity. And so that's really the best way to get your donor immediately to your page specifically. Otherwise, donors that aren't necessarily certain in who they're going to donate to, they're just kind of perusing or browsing, or maybe they've gone to your organization first through your own subpage and gave, you know, the amount they want to give to you, but they said, well, maybe there's another organization or two I want to see if I want to donate to. Then they can use kind of the main site to kind of search for other organizations and look through organizations that are participating there. So that's kind of the best way to get donors immediately to your page, is to use that unique URL to drive them specifically to your page there on the site to be able to process that donation. Jennifer asks, how do tax receipts work? Do we issue those through the system? How about the anonymous donors? That's a great question. So tax receipts are automatically sent out in an email from the system. So on the day of the event, as donors are making donations, the system is automatically sending a tax receipt that gives them the amount that they donated and the organizations that they donated to, and has their tax information on it. Now, always a best practice, always a good idea to send those donors a follow-up email saying thank you from your organization, but they will receive an automated email from the system that acts as their tax receipt. So you shouldn't have to worry about that. However, if you have a donor who asks a question about, you know, I didn't receive my receipt, you know, obviously, you know, first thing to say is, did you check your spam folder? Did you check to make sure it didn't end up in the wrong place? If they have checked those things and they say, no, I didn't get that receipt, they can go onto the site and they should be able to enter their email address and be able to get their donations receipt emailed to them. So they should be able to go on there and to be able to do that from the home page once the event is over. And then another question, and for anonymous donors, that's the same. Those anonymous donors receive those tax receipts as well. So they receive their own tax receipt that says who they donated to. Works in the same way for anonymous as it does for public donations. Someone asked, will donors be able to retrieve lost passwords for profiles created in the system? Yeah, so a donor can always, if they forgot their password, they can go to log in. They can log in here as a donor, and they can always click on forgot password and reset their password. This will send an automated email that will allow them to then reset their password on the page. So if they ever forget their password, that's the way that they can go in and do that. So at this time, I'm going to talk through how donors can set up campaigns. So donors can set up campaigns. Let me switch to the right version here. So if we go to our page here, a donor can essentially set up a campaign first by finding your organization. So a donor needs to find your organization on the system. So if you're not live yet, you haven't set up your profile, a donor can't set up a campaign on your behalf until your organization is approved and your profile is live on the website. Once your profile is live on the website, the donor will search for your organization. When they find your organization, they'll be able to go to this page and they'll be able to see these fundraising pages piece down here. They'll click on this Help Us Fundraise button. This will prompt them to log in or set up a profile. They can create a profile here, which just takes them through these basic questions in order to set up that profile. Or if they already have an account, which I do in this case, they can just log into that account. When they log in here, it'll direct them to My Campaigns, where they'll be able to set up a new campaign for that organization. So you'll see we have our organization, Civic or Charity. We also have some instructions here for donors on how they can set up their page, and a couple of important points for them to make sure that they're getting right in going through this process. So they can read through that. But essentially, the donor then sets up their campaign. So I'm going to call this My Peer Campaign. They set their own URL, just like you do as an organization. So with this, an organization will be able to essentially send a potential donor or a friend directly to this URL here, so that they can share that on social media really easily. So they'll be able to direct a donor to go to www.domore24.org/mypeercampaign. And that'll direct them to that campaign. Because that campaign is tied to an organization, all of the donations that are processed through that campaign automatically go to that organization. So you don't have to worry about any misattribution there. If a donor is setting up a campaign, it's essentially as if your organization is directly receiving that donation. The only difference is that it's being tracked in this way so that you can see those campaigns progress throughout the day. And so the donor will go through this process and we'll set up the summary here. Why are you donating? There's some kind of help bubbles here that donors can look at to understand what these various fields mean. But they essentially set up why I'm supporting this organization. The donor can indicate if they have an incentive fund or not. An incentive fund essentially allows that donor to indicate I have $500 from my employer, and they're going to contribute $500 to match in the same way that matching funds work. Matching the incentive fund does not roll up in the same way that matching funds do. So if you recall, matching funds work by subtracting the matching amount and adding it to your total. For the incentive fund, it doesn't add that amount, and the rationale behind that is, this donor may say they have this $500 that they're going to match or their employer is going to match, but that's a few steps removed from somebody actually, giving you money or having money being processed through the site, and so it's really static. This is just something that's informational for donors to be able to see, hey, I've got this match amount, help me get to my $500 here. And so they'll go through, add their details. They can add a video if they want. They can add a little one-sentence personal appeal and a campaign page photo, and then they can put their goal in here. So my goal here for this campaign is $500 because my employer is going to match up to $500. So I want to try and hit $500 so that we can maximize that amount. I can save this, or if I'm ready to submit it, I can submit it for approval. When I submit it for approval, what that does is it triggers that organization to approve that campaign. So I can see now the view of all my details. If I go to my campaigns here, I can see I have a number. This donor has a number of campaigns that they've created over time, all for the same organization here. But now it's my responsibility as an organization to approve this profile, to approve this campaign. Because we want to make sure that you as an organization have the final say in what campaigns are represented in association with your organization, you're going to come to your back end. You're going to go to the campaigns tab for your organization, and you'll see campaigns to be reviewed. So here's my campaign, My Peer campaign. We just submitted it. The goal's $500 here. As an organization, I will view this information to make sure that everything looks, as I hope it should look, and I can ask any questions. And then I can approve, decline, or decline that campaign. Once I approve that campaign, it goes into my active campaigns list. So I can see what campaigns I currently have active and live on the website. At that point, this donor, we can see here that my campaign here is set up. I can then edit that campaign. So after it's been approved, the donor has the ability to go back in. Now they can see their profile live on the site. So if I go here and I look for that test organization again, I see my peer campaign shows up here with our $500 goal. I didn't add an image or anything, but this is essentially how it would display. So I can, as a donor, once I'm approved, come in here and take a look at this campaign and see, is this looking how I want it to? Is it saying everything in the right places? Does this all make sense? And if they have something they want to edit, they can go back to that approved campaign, hover over this little gear icon, and hit edit. And then they can adjust these pieces as they want, and they'll see those appear live on the site. So somebody asked if you can, if this walkthrough will be available for donors, for you all to be able to send to donors. Yes, it absolutely will be. There's a step-by-step walkthrough that Tony's put together that will walk through each of the steps that a donor has to go through to get a campaign set up on the website and to maintain and manage that campaign. Once a campaign is approved, a donor will be able to, on the day of and after the event, see donors to their campaign. So if a donor comes to their approved campaign here and they say, I want to see what my donors look like, they're going to hit view, and then they're going to see donors to your campaign. They'll be able to see processed and scheduled donations, just like you can see as an organization. So they'll be able to kind of keep track of, did my mom give that $50 she said she was going to give? Or was she just lying to me? So we'll be able to kind of keep track of who's scheduled a donation, who's actually contributed. The anonymous feature works the same way here. So if somebody gives anonymously, they won't get that information, but they will have access to that information for about a week to a week and a half. You'll see the end date here is 5/25. Essentially what this means is that on the 25th, donors will the profiles will go off of the site. They'll still be able to come in here to the back end, but they won't be able to go and see their page anymore. Their page will become inactive at that point. So we'll inactivate all those, but they'll still be able to come in and see the donors and the scheduled donations for their particular campaign there. Jennifer asks, will we also receive the donors for the peer campaigns? Yes. So you will receive all essentially peer campaign acts in the exact same, a donation to a peer campaign acts in the exact same way. You get the exact same information as you would if that donation came directly to your organization through your page. So there's no difference in the information you receive. You get all the same information. The only difference is that you'll also see whether or not that donation was tied to a campaign. So if you have 3 or 4, you'll be able to see, these 10 donations were through this campaign, but you'll get all the same donor data that you would get if they donated directly to you, if they donate to a campaign. Amy asks, do you have a recommendation for how many peer-to-peer pages one organization should have? Is there a number that's too many? There's not really a number that's too many. On your page, you'll only be able to see, I believe it's 2 that will display on the page at a time. So we've got a test campaign and my peer campaign set up here. It'll randomly cycle through. If let's say you had 10 campaigns, it'll randomly display 2 on your organization's profile page. But you can also, on the day of, you should be able to go and see all of the campaigns, see a list of all the campaigns for that particular organization. There's not really a limit to it. It's more a question of, there are a lot of different theories on what the best way to go is here. Some say try to get campaigns that you're going to hit your goal or get real close to your goal, so that when donors go to your site, they don't see 10 completely unmet goals that people just created on a whim, but you're actually seeing engagement as a donor that's looking across these campaigns. You're seeing, wow, this organization has a lot of engagement. They've got a lot of support because look at all these campaigns and look at how well they're all doing. So I think, some would say quality is better than quantity. Others would say just get as many pages as you possibly can, because that's more touch points for those networks that those donors have. If you have 15 or 20 campaigns running for your organization, that's 15 or 20 donors that may be out there trying to advocate all their friends and all their networks to donate to your organization. So really up to you as far as what you think is the best way to go. I think you definitely want at least a few campaigns that you know are going to get close to or that are going to hit or exceed their goal, so that at least you have, you know, campaigns that are coming through that are partway to their goal, which, you know, indicates psychologically to someone that progress is being made and they can help contribute to that progress, rather than, you know, everything's 0% funded. Why isn't anyone else giving to this organization? Someone asked, do NPO pages become inactive like peer-to-peer pages? So no, NPO pages do not become inactive like peer-to-peer pages. You'll still be able, donors will still be able to go to your page after the event and see all the details that are there on your page. They won't be able to donate post-event, but they will be able to go to that page and see the details. They'll be able to see how much you raised. They'll be able to see, you know, basically what's on your profile right now. Okay, so I don't have much else to go over. That's essentially how a donor can set up a campaign on your behalf, set up a fundraising page for you, and how you can approve that page and then you know, get donations through that process. So if anyone else has other questions, or if there's something that I only partially answered for you and you want to follow up on, now is the time. We have a few minutes here. We can talk through those items. Happy to answer other questions. But otherwise, if we don't have any questions here in the next couple of minutes, we'll go ahead and close the recording down, close the session down, and you should again be able to access this recording by going to your back end here, going to your back end and going to the resources section of the back end. You should see that in the next few days, see this uploaded there. With that, I think Tony has a couple of points that he wants to make. Tony, are you, can you go ahead and chime in?
Yeah, Joe, thanks. I wanted to actually double back to, it was Case Sheridan that asked about why use the Do More, and I think that question, there may be some folks on the line who have not yet signed up, or they're not really sure, why would I even want to do More 24? And there's a couple of really good reasons. The first is, hey, you might win some prizes. So we do have the prize pools out there. If you can win a prize, that's even more money than you would have been getting. The second, though, is even better, is to leverage the gamification about the site. So you can use the prizes as a catalyst, and you can use the peer-to-peer campaigns as a catalyst to bring in not just, you know, more people and more donors. You know, you want to get, you can send out messages like, hey, you know, we want to be in the top 5 to win the one of the grand prizes, and we're at 6 right now. Come on, somebody give us another $1,000. You know, or 10 people for 100 would get us over the top. And so that gamification is something that you can't do on your own website. And you know, and leveraging our marketing. So we're doing a lot of PR and marketing around Do More 24 in general, and you get to leverage that when you participate in the Do More program. So just wanted to cover that in there.
Sure.
I saw that, will you be available offline for any questions prior to the lead up? I can tell you, you can always send an email to questions@domore24.org. And you can also call our hotline. Our help desk number is 202-488-2009. And those numbers are on the domore24.org website. But it's questions@domore24.org and 202-488-2009.
Great. And then the last question here from Jennifer, I may have missed this, but can we customize the tax receipts, or are they preset? So they are preset, and they automatically populate your organization's information and donation amounts for that donor. So a tax receipt essentially looks like, thank you so much for contributing to Do More 24. You know, et cetera, a sentence or two of language there, and then it says here's your donation history. So a donor might donate to 3 different organizations. It'll have those in a list, and it'll say you donated $25 to the Civic Corps charity, you donated $25 to the United Way, donated $25, and then it has a little disclaimer, this is your tax receipt, and that's all pre-populated and pre-set up for you, so you don't have the ability to customize individual tax receipts or tax receipts just for your organization there.
Great. But do remember that you should be sending a thank you of your own, and so that's an opportunity for custom messages when you follow up with an actual thank you as opposed to just a receipt.
Yeah, absolutely. Great point there. You'll be able to send those emails pretty easily by going to your process donations, exporting that list, and you'll automatically have an email list that you can send to donors thanking them for their participation in the day. So you will be able to definitely send a custom message to those donors. As long as they're not anonymous to your organization, you'll be able to send that custom donation to them via that mechanism. Always a great best practice to reach out to them that way. Great. Well, thank you to the anonymous person. So that's about it. If there aren't any other questions, we'll leave it at that. Again, to review those dates really quickly, scheduled donations are going to open up on May 1st, so donors will be able to go onto the site and schedule their donations on May 1st. Up until the event, they'll be able to schedule those donations. So if they aren't going to be able, they'll be out of the country, they'll be working all day, they'll be out in the woods hiking around, and they won't have their phone on them to be able to make a donation. They can schedule those donations beforehand and know that they're going to be participating in that event on the day of. Registration is going to close May 15th at midnight. Organization and campaigns, we're closing down your ability to edit and make changes to your profile and to campaign profiles on May 16th. At the end of the day, May 16th, so the day before the event, you'll be able to go in and do that. But on the day of, the event starts at noon. If you try to go in the morning of and make an edit to your profile, you won't be able to do that. It'll be locked down at that point. And then the day itself, again, as everybody knows, May 17th to 18th from noon to noon. And then you can expect to get your check or to have those checks distributed and sent to you on or around June 15th. So about a month after the event is where you can expect to see those pieces. And as we get closer to the event, I have one person who's asking about prizes. As we get closer to the event, we'll talk about how those prizes will essentially be awarded and how they'll work. So you can expect to see emails and information from the Do More 24 team about prizes. I think the list is already out there and available for you to start thinking about and strategizing. But those details will keep coming. But again, if you have questions, questions at domore24.org. And we will be happy to help you out there. So with that, thank you all so much for participating and being on the call and asking so many good questions. And again, this will be available to you in your resources section here in the next couple of days. Looking forward to it.
Hey, Joe?
Yeah.
Sorry. I got some late breaking news from Renee poked her head in here. We're going to do a webinar. This will not the Civic Corps team, but this will be the United Way team. We're going to do a webinar next Wednesday to talk about prizes and how they're calculated. If you want to know more about prizes, they are listed on the domore24.org website. If you look for the page, I think it's actually labeled awards. And there they are. And but we are going to do a webinar next Wednesday with Renee and myself from United Way to talk about. I know particularly around the stuff like the selfies and the Twitter prizes, the social media prizes. I know there's a lot of questions around that, so we're going to try and address those next Wednesday.
Great. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.